Okay, folks, welcome to the council meeting for the 25th of May to elected members, to staff and to members of the gallery. I'd like to acknowledge the Kaurna people as the traditional custodians of the land, and that we're on the traditional country of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains region, and we pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationships with the land, and we acknowledge that they are of continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today. Also read you the council pledge. We seek wisdom and understanding as we face the duties of our united task, praying for the peace and prosperity of our city. Please be seated. Okay, on leave we have nil, and apologies, we have one from Councillor Robin Pearce for tonight. Declaration by members of a conflict of interest. Are there any such declarations? Nil. Confirmation of minutes. Some are happy to move that the minutes for the 27th of April meeting be confirmed. The Mayor, wish to speak to them?
No, thanks.
Councillor Barnett, happy to second?
Yes.
Any comment?
No.
Any other comments? All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Item 5 is public question time. We have a maximum of 15 minutes for public questions, a maximum time of 3 minutes per person. We allow an extension of time. There are a number of meeting procedures about it. I think we have a couple of questions, or at least one from the gallery. So now is your chance. Are there any questions from members of the gallery? Please come forward into the seat just here that's vacant, or you can stand if you prefer.
Is this now to
Absolutely.
put forward? Because I thought it was later on in the meeting.
Oh, well.
Number 9?
No.
No, okay.
Not on the agenda version I've got here. You're at number 6. So
Okay, all right.
And if you, for the records, if you just state your name and address.
Okay, my name is Ed Sioffi. I reside at 60 Belford Avenue, Prospect.
Thank you. And you've got 3 minutes if you needed to ask a question, and we'll see if we can get you an answer.
Okay, well, I'm here representing the Belford residents from the apartment. Since handover in 2019, we've been battling with various development and building issues, and we'd also like to thank the Prospect Council for their assistance and also instigating the zero tolerance ruling, which I believe is actually on the agenda tonight. My question tonight is relating to the waste management of our building, which under the development process originally, the waste management plan was approved by council, and this was not conveyed by the developer to the residents on purchase. And we have continued to pay an independent contractor, namely Sewers Waste, in the vicinity of about $12,000 per annum to collect waste from our building. We feel that this is fundamentally unfair, that we pay for waste services that are not provided by the council, in addition to the independent provider. And we're looking at seeking if there's could be a policy review from the council to discount or reduce these fees to us. We have already sent in a petition in respect of this waste management to the concerning office here. I think the manager of governance, Mr. Robert Dabrowski. So this is what we're looking for.
Okay, so this time is for questions.
Yeah.
There's a later section of the meeting to make a representation to us. So we'll take your question as, here's an opportunity for a policy change. CEO. Thank you, Chair. I think there's 16 apartments in your...
That's correct, yes.
Council's policy is that 32 bins on the curb won't work. And therefore, there has to be a large bin service. Council doesn't have facility for a large bin service, and therefore it's an extra cost. And therefore it would require a policy and rating change. And I'm happy to refer it through you, Chair, to the Director of Finance. Jen? Director.
Through the Chair, there's various options that Council can look into should Council wish to explore. Council could consider the change of rating policy. For example, by having the waste management as a separate rate, and the multi-storey building who already pay for their own waste services could be exempt from that. That is one option. Another option is council could also look at reviewing its waste management strategy to see if our waste management can actually pick up those 660 or 1100 liter pickup bins.
Yeah.
So there are various options that council could look at. Could that be a policy change? Yeah, council could explore, should council wish.
I think talking to one of the other council members, Matt Lovewood, suggested that perhaps we put together a report for your next meeting, and perhaps we can look at that and maybe put a proposal forward. Just to look at that.
May I suggest you keep working with Councillor Lowered, who's right there next to you, Deputy Mayor, and ask him how to initiate such a thing. Would be the next step.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about instigating that this evening, and then perhaps we don't really need approval for that. We can just go ahead and put that report forward and
Try not to burden yourselves with the process of local government.
Yep.
Deputy Mayor can fill you on how to initiate something. He can initiate something on your behalf. Yeah.
All
So take it from there. Any further questions for tonight?
no, just if you don't mind, any other questions after that?
No?
No, that's
Okay.
fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming forward.
Okay.
And if you're here only for that item,
Yes.
then you're welcome to leave now, or you're welcome to stay for the entire council meeting if you wish. Up to you.
No, people want it for us.
You never know.
Never know. Well,
You've elected us. We will do the best we
Yeah.
can on your behalf.
Well, I mentioned a bit about the zero tolerance. I think that's great. So I've already read through that. I understand that. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for coming forward tonight.
Okay,
Are there
thank
any
you
other
very
questions from the gallery? No, that being the case, we'll move on. Thank you very much for that representation. We'll now move to item 7. Petitions are 0. Deputations there is 1 from Mr. Clinton Devonish from the Broadview Tennis Club. If you'd like to come forward, Devonish. Have you got a presentation ready to show us? Get Minute Secretary getting you set up. You've got up to 5 minutes, which is a luxury. And I'll just let Jess get back into a seat because okay. And for the purposes of the minutes, if you could state your name and address.
Clinton Devonish, number 2, Emily Street, Nailsworth.
Brilliant. You have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, CEO, elected members and staff and guests. My name's Clinton Devonish, as I've just said, Vice President of the Broadview Tennis Club. And tonight I'm here to present something to you that I'm really passionate about. By the end of the presentation tonight, you'll hopefully be able to take away three key things: a really good appreciation of the Broadview Tennis Club and what we've achieved, the opportunity you have to deliver a project of importance to the local and regional community, and how you can achieve this vision with the dedication of a great team from the Broadview Tennis Club. 100 years. Broadview Tennis Club was established in 1921, which makes this year our 100th birthday celebration, which is an amazing achievement. Thank you, Mayor O'Loughlin, for being our vice patron over the years. And towards the end of the year, there will be a celebration event that we'll be inviting you to. So thank you for that. Our promise to the community and our values are on the screen. We live by these daily and weekly, and we're really proud of our achievements as a club. I can actually say this with evidence. That's our committee there, and I'm proud to announce that we have just been awarded the Tennis SA Most Outstanding Club Award for 2021.
Fabulous.
In the words of to quote Tennis SA, this is the most coveted award in tennis and signifies a highly organised and well-managed club that is financially self-sufficient, provides accredited coaching programs at all levels, exhibits a positive, safe and welcoming environment, and manages a large group of dedicated community volunteers. So we're really pleased with that effort. We're really satisfied, but we actually want to achieve more, and that's why I'm here tonight. A lot of our success is founded on some of these photos that are on the screen. So myself and Martin Richards, our club president on the left there, we support the Adelaide International event. Adelaide International, international tennis players have finally come back to South Australia, and we are for the next 5 years the support venue for that event. We got off our own bat and went and met with Tennis SA and brought those international tennis players to our club and to this council. In the middle, we continue to support the Prospect Fair and other community events and introduce tennis to all sorts of people in the community. And over on the right-hand side, another thing to brag about, and this is not a bragging session, but Josh and Clinton are the State League Green Ball champions for 2021. So they're the future of our club, and they're also the future of the community in the city of Prospect. We are the most recognised club in South Australia, and that's testament to the award we've just won. Our blue Broadview tops stand out from a mile away at any club we play at. In the middle there, our courts are used every day, every night of every week. So we have the community support for our courts. And our female participation and leadership at the club has gone from strength to strength. The 3 Perpetual Trophy awards on the right-hand side were all awarded to our female players and leadership team in the past year. Just some areas for improvement. So on the left is the top of our club rooms. Our club rooms are just not fit as a club room. They're full of asbestos, they're full of cracks. They currently fit about 20 people in them. Our toilets in the middle there are unsafe, unhygienic. There are no change rooms, no changing places, no DDA compliance. And unfortunately, when we had international players here, we had a toilet blockage. Our fences are still falling down, and our lights are expensive to run and maintain.
1 minute if you need it.
The bottom right-hand corner there is the croquet area where the new proposal for 4 courts is envisaged. The opportunity in January 2021, City of Prospect officially endorsed the master plan for the Broadview Oval Precinct. We actually have this project ready to go. I know a lot of focus has been around the football club and the community centre that goes with the football club. We have a fantastic opportunity to deliver 4 new courts for the tennis precinct. We have the opportunity to flatten 4 old buildings and convert that into 1 purpose-built club room that can suit all clubs in the precinct. And we have the ability to deliver this in the next 12 months. Just quickly on council's budget, my understanding is that there were some opportunities around the budget in terms of funding. In the last 2 days, I found out that Churchill Road has received approval for funding, which requires a co-contribution from council. However, I still think there's an opportunity to really deliver on this project as a priority for the precinct. Our promise, we will secure additional funding from Tennis SA. We will deliver on the next stage of this master plan for council prior to the elections in November 22. We will manage the co-location of the 2 clubs. We will find an alternative venue during construction, and we will deliver an outcome that has an immediate community benefit. If I could just add lastly, these are just some of the ideas that we have in terms of what could be achieved for the club rooms. Given the financial budget,
So, Tim, how much longer do you need?
about 10 seconds, Mayor.
Carry
Okay. Given the future next year's budget consideration for council, what we could also consider with council would be some seed funding to the tune of about $150,000, which would enable us to progress some of these designs to detailed design and have a project that is actually shovel ready for future funding applications.
Thank you very much. Comprehensive and visually terrific. We normally ask if there's questions, we'd be happy to hold on for them. Are there any questions from elected members of the deputy? Councillor De Backer.
Yeah, the really good presentation, so thank you very much. It is really exciting, and I think it's great that we're such an awarded club. You know, we've just actually been talking to another club in the area who've got different sort of income streams. Do you have sort of sponsorship models or people that sort of sponsor the club outside of Tennis SA? Like, do you have any other income streams?
Yeah, we do. So we run a sponsorship program. So we have several local companies that sponsor the club. And we also have a future fund. So a lot of our funds are generated through selling ice creams and some money over the bar and selling tennis balls. But we do have about $80,000 worth of future fund that we like to invest in this type of project.
Any other questions? Councillor Group.
The first one is, you mentioned Colin Grove and you mentioned co-location. So I presume this is a presentation from Broadview. Where's Colin Grove in this conversation at the moment?
Through you, Chair. Thanks for the question. Look, there's a checkered history to the two clubs. There's a reason the two clubs are not one club. We have proud histories and we both commit to that. Both clubs have different business models. Broadview Tennis Club is very much a community-focused model. We accept players of all ages and all standards. Colin Grove have a different business model, and that's absolutely acceptable. They look at more of the elite sports training and coaching. So I see the opportunity for those two models to actually come together. We're not talking about amalgamation at the moment, but we are talking about the ability to co-locate. And I think for the future of our clubs and the future of tennis, it would be remiss of us to accept living in Besser Block club rooms for the rest of our future. And we would have to consider the ability to come together as a co-location opportunity in the first instance.
Thank you. That's really good to hear. So they're supportive of what you've proposed here in terms of that new building and the co-location? Are they?
Through the chair, they are not as active as what we are.
Okay.
That's being open and honest about the situation. However, we have had several meetings with them. We've actually had council staff with us at those meetings. And we are obviously trying to bring them on the journey of looking at the facility as a tennis facility rather than just looking at club versus club.
Yeah.
I believe we have enough of a relationship to sit around the table and work something out. Otherwise, I wouldn't make that commitment to council.
Yeah, okay. And really pleased to hear that as well. Last question is, there was a slide that you had to, probably because you're running out of time, go over quite quickly, which looked at costs.
Yes.
Can I ask you what that cost is?
So our
and if you could share the slide.
Our estimated cost, if I work out how to go backwards. Our estimated cost, councillor, is between 2 and 2.5 million. At the moment, I'm giving it that range because we are working on concept designs for the club room and fairly well detailed designs for the court construction.
Yep.
Definitely deliverable within 12 months. It would have to be delivered in that time frame for us to work around seasons and so forth. My commentary down the bottom was based on information I had last week around council's commitment for funding to enable some of those stimulus projects to be explored. And as I said, my understanding in talking to council staff is that Churchill Road has been successfully co-funded, which obviously eats into that. What I said was 3.35 available funding. There's probably not much of that left.
Correct.
Is my understanding.
Thank
That's okay.
Thank you, councillor. And Deputy Mayor.
Two questions. What was the second question? First question is your facility only available to people who are members of your club, or is it accessible to anyone who wants to rock up with a couple of old tennis rackets and a tennis ball and they can have a kit?
Through you, Chair, the club is absolutely accessible to all. We do have contact details at the club to access the courts at any time. We're fortunate enough to have several committee members live around the corner with keys. But we are actually looking and working with Tennis SA, and it would be part of the new development, is to look at access codes. Tennis SA actually got a tennis access system whereby you can book the courts online and use an access code to access the courts. Open to the community at all times.
Thank you. Second question.
Second question with regards to funding. So you mentioned a future fund of, I think you said $80,000 or thereabouts. What other, and if you don't know, I'm not looking for an exact answer, so maybe I'll rephrase the question. Is the club willing to go and seek funds through other channels apart from council to do this work, or is your expectation that it can only go ahead if you receive significant financial support from council?
Through the chair, thanks for the question. Yes, we do have $80,000 worth of future fund at the club that we're willing to put forward for this project. We also have a commitment from Tennis SA up to approximately 10% of the capital value of the project. We believe on top of that, we can negotiate with tennis SA around the court surfacing. So what we would like to do is bring the courts up to international standard in terms of the actual surface, so they can be used to support the 11 international event. The thing that we struggle with as a club is applying for state and federal funding. And that's where we require council support. I guess the ability to drive the submissions through. We've submitted for federal funding, but we've done it as a club. And generally we don't have that impetus to get that bigger amount of funding that we would do.
Thank you. Councillor Harris, I think was from before.
Yeah, just fairly well on board of the knowledge of what you're doing there. Where in this future plan does the other courts, St. Philip's Courts up the end, that still fits in up the corner, or are you looking with Collingwood, the just from the, I suppose, from the bowling club to the end of your property, or are you still looking at using those couple of courts on the other side? If in all this,
Through the chair, the two courts at St. Philip's would be subject to council pursuing the rest of the master plan development. I think there are two courts still envisaged in the final plans, but I think part of that area is converted to cricket nets from memory. So look, the two courts at St. Philip's are still part of the plans in terms of the tennis precinct, but obviously they are the full community courts, and they're open to all. They're currently considered under our lease as well.
Councillor Barnett.
Yeah. I was just, thank you for your presentation. Very well done. I'm still struggling a bit to find in terms of our, the whole master plan for the sports area. And so we've got the Broadview sort of here, but we've still got Congrove. Still, it'd be nice if they could come with us and we put it all together. I'm just struggling to see how it's all melding.
Question, Councillor.
Yes.
What was your question of the deputy?
I'm struggling to see how it's all melding. Question mark.
Right.
Through the chair, it's melding together, councillor, through the discussions that we have had, but we are mindful of the different business models, as I mentioned before. So I think what you find with change at club level is that change is often seen as a threat to the business model. And what we're saying to Collingwood is we're not threatening that business model. We actually think it's complementary to the way that we run our tennis club. And the only thing that we're changing in terms of, there would still be an allocation of courts for the two clubs. All we're changing is our ability to operate from the same club room. So I think that's the key point. It's not landed yet, and it's subject to a few things happening in terms of funding and the project itself. But I think those discussions have progressed.
Thank you. Councillor Ripp.
Yeah, would it be, for two questions? First of all, would it be possible, if you haven't provided the presentation of stuff, that we could get a copy of that? Would that be possible? It's not.
Happy to provide that to us.
Through the chair, the presentation's already with your staff.
Right.
Yep. So
I'll
we
get
can
the stuff.
distribute it to the members. Thank you.
Also, have you actually had a look, has the club had a look at other examples across Metropolitan Adelaide where clubs do co-locate? And one that comes immediate to mind is Club West Lakes. Club West Lakes, up until a couple of years ago when I was there, had 5 different clubs, some with all ranging business models, and there's also an overarching management committee that actually has a representative of each club there that actually manages the facilities, and they work together with the management committee. Have you had a chance to have a look at things like that where those examples work?
Through the chair, so we have looked at those types of models, and that model was actually envisaged and conceived with this master plan.
Okay.
If the football club rooms were actually located closer to the tennis clubs at the southern end, the southern goals, then there's absolutely the ability to coordinate and collaborate with all clubs and have them in the same club room. We've just found, and through the development of the master plan, that the footy club being over there and the tennis club over here, it's just a distance too far in terms of how to operate.
Just following on to that though, how about the two, would, if you're looking at, if the club's looking at a facility where you're looking at co-location, could that new facility still work for Broadview and Collinggrove? Because like, I obviously want to see the two clubs work together. Having the two clubs separate obviously won't work, in my opinion. So the co-location would be the way to go. How long do you think it will take to progress those talks with Collinggrove, particularly on co-location? But that's going to be an essential part, really.
Through the chair, we've worked closely with Tennis SA. They've also come to us with some recommendations around what those types of agreements can look like.
Yeah.
There's plenty of examples of clubs co-locating, and we could pull together a draft agreement very quickly.
Thank you. Councillor Tobacco. Did you have a question?
Was a question, but it's probably to staff as opposed to.
Okay, yeah, we can take it
We'll
off
do that
that
another
line.
time. That's
Yeah.
fine.
Just a question from me, just to, I think, help with this issue. You're happy to proceed on the basis that either the clubs are two clubs within one building or combine as one club. To you, it doesn't make any difference about the master plan for tennis in your part of the precinct. It's the same outcome physically, even though there might be different management models within.
Yes, through you. The physical arrangement and infrastructure required wouldn't change. So we can see the benefit in the 4 additional courts and the one consolidated club room to suit both clubs.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Are there any further questions? No, that being the case, thank you very much for your deputation tonight. It's brought us up to speed on a number of matters. If you'd like to resume your seat in the gallery, you two are welcome to stay for the balance of the council meeting if you want to. Equally, if you and other members of the gallery have got other things to do, feeding fish, ironing, polishing brass, then up to you. But thank you so much for coming tonight. Good morning. You come and inspect your brass, Ed. Make sure it's polished. Brass. Councillor.
Silver or brass?
That's why he's not the deputy mayor. Okay, just allowing people to exit the gallery so you can resume discussion. Next section is section 9, questions without notice. Are there any? Councillor Group.
Thank you. Look, I do have a few. And as I flipped through a number of papers on a particular issue that's arisen in the last couple of weeks, it's in relation to 108 Main North Road at Prospect, otherwise known as the radar rental site. And I've got a couple of questions around development, so I'll ask them to the chair, to the appropriate director. The first one is, this development is being assessed by the SCAP, but the SCAP has not yet confirmed they've received City of Prospect's CAPS comments. Can you confirm if these have been sent to SCAP?
See, through you, Chair, to the director.
Thank you, and through the Mayor, I can confirm that our comments from our SCAP were sent back to SCAP on the 13th of May. Okay. There appears to be some issues in terms of what's being shown on the planning portal, because I believe that it doesn't even show that the matter was referred to us, let alone responded, but that has happened.
So have we confirmed that with them?
We have definitely sent it through the portal and via email.
Yep. So but we haven't followed up to say, have you actually got it? Because there's some doubt. Just want to check that. Or could we?
Through the chair, we certainly could. In our opinion, there is zero doubt.
Yeah. I agree with you. Anyway, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. A second question is does the SCAP have the power to consider this application as a category 2 or 3, not as a 1?
Again, through you, Chair, to the director.
Again, thank you for the question, and through the Mayor. The SCAP's role is to determine the categorisation. So their role is to pick category 1, 2 or 3. Importantly, it's not a discretionary exercise. It's either the components of the development are either category 1, category 2 or category 3. We've looked at this as just part of the way that we deal with the matters when we receive them for referral, and it's our view that all the components of the development are assigned category 1 either through the development plan or through the development regulations. So our view is that it is correctly categorised. So if SCAP were to do something different, we would potentially suggest that that is an incorrect process.
Councillor.
And just for clarity, category 1 prohibits any public consultation on the assessment.
Correct.
Thank you. It's more a comment than a question, possibly. So this probably makes my next question somewhat redundant, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Does the council have any authority to request a SCAP to assess an application in a way contrary to the planning rules?
Sorry, can you just further define that question?
So what I'm asking is can the council write to SCAP or make contact with SCAP or have any interaction with SCAP and suggest to them that given this, or given any development, I won't talk about this development as such, that any development could be assessed as a category 2 or 3, or must SCAP only follow the legislative requirements?
I'm pretty sure the answer is they have to follow the same legislation we do, but CEO.
And again, through you, Chair, to the Director.
And through the Mayor, yes, essentially the legislative process is there in terms of a must follow. I think on this topic, if we were to form a view that SCAP had incorrectly processed something, we would certainly raise that through our commentary. And as I mentioned on this case, we don't believe that that has occurred. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor?
So 2 more. The Planning and Design Code came in on the 19th of March. This application for 108 Maynooth Road was submitted prior to the 19th of March, which, as I understand it, means it will be assessed to get the development plan instead. Is there any material difference in making those assessments prior to if it was lodged prior to the 19th of March or after the 19th of March? So does the planning code treat it differently to what the development plan would have?
So yeah,
Again, through you, Chair, to the Director.
And through the Mayor. Look, essentially, the short answer to that is probably not. The way that this seems to have occurred, as many developments did, is that there was a period where the planning and design code was unknown, pretty much until about the 18th of March or the 19th for the general population. So in an effort to progress with some certainty, a lot of applications were lodged in the weeks prior to that period. In terms of the planning and design code and the policies, very similar under planning and design code as they were under development plan. And in terms of process under PDI Act, also very similar. So whilst they may have put in ahead of time to get certainty, if they were to lodge 2 weeks ago, the process would be almost identical from my understanding of it. Yeah. Category 1, 2, 3 no longer exists, but it would fall into the non-notifiable category and go through urban corridor zoning, which again has very similar policy structure in terms of envisaged uses to come.
Okay, Councillor. And my final question just relates to traffic impacts in the streets associated with that development, namely Gloucester and Milner. Has council made any considerations yet to the management of traffic in those streets? And if not, when will that be triggered?
So yeah.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. We will take that on notice. The Director, Acting Director is not well tonight, and I will pass that on to him. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And just to follow on, just remind us, we can, CEO Director, why SCAP are looking at this. It's not a substantial building. It's not a 5-story building. What's the trigger that the applicants use to go to SCAP?
Through you, Chair, to the Director.
Chair, I actually, off the top of my head, can't think what that was. I believe it was mentioned in the CAP report, but I.
Is it the $3 million?
Whether it's the $3 million call-in trigger.
It was called in.
So Coordinator General, which no longer exists under new process, it exercised that process.
Perhaps could you send us a memo just
Yeah.
reminding us, just so we're aware, and I know that we can challenge it. Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any further questions about notice? Councillor De Backer.
Yeah, my question's more broadly, and I thank Councillor Group for bringing these matters to our attention. Is the complaints mechanism with the changes to the planning code? So I sent an email to Rob Dabrowski, and I think he had sent a circular to all elected members. So it was just a question around the complaints mechanism for the State Planning Commission or the CAP, now with the changes to the planning code. In the correspondence, that complaint mechanism wasn't, the information wasn't available on our website. And I was just wondering, one, has that been updated?
So this is the
So
code of conduct complaint?
well, so this is the issue. So prior to the changes, it seemed to be you could complain against a private certifier or a council, whoever the certifying authority was. I'm just wondering what the changes are. There seems to be a code of conduct, but not as SCAP as an entity. And I just want the public to be aware what avenues are open for them for each of those different.
Do you mind if I ask you a question in two parts? One is, what are the
Yes.
conduits available?
Uh-huh.
And secondly, if they're on our website.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Please.
So,
Yeah, through you again, Chair, to the director.
Through the chair, essentially, given it's now this sort of one policy statewide system, the Plan SA website is essentially the one-stop shop for how to make a complaint. And I do have something in front of me, plansa.sa.gov.au, have your say / make a complaint. So that sounds like it's relatively simple to follow from a state point of view. Obviously, that's very new, so we haven't had a lot of exposure to that, but it is this sort of statewide approach. We've made a conscious choice, as of many councils, in relation to part 2 of the question, to not replicate Plan SA information on our council website, but we do have a number of links or references back to Plan SA, rather than, because they can essentially make changes that we don't catch. So we're just referring back to the statewide approach. So that would be, I imagine, what we'd see on our website if we were to look at the complaints area for that general.
thank you, Councillor.
One more question, just in regards to code of conduct. Obviously, it's very hard when you don't necessarily have access to all the information. Is an FOI process available for SCAP information, or only after the fact?
So is an FOI process available during the assessment process?
Well, I'm assuming it wouldn't be, but it's very hard to assess code of conduct without actually seeing. Before or after, is there FOI available for someone to view documents that have gone before?
See that?
Through you again, Chair.
Through the chair, I'm no FOI expert, and I know that things have changed in relation to what's available for public viewing. Given my understanding of the portal, I imagine that you would have to FOI to see almost any detail while it's under assessment. And I also believe that that doesn't really change once an approval or refusal occurs. It just sits there with essentially a decision that's viewable by a certain number of people. So we've had a discussion internally recently, I think it came up in a workshop or a council meeting, that for example, as elected members, you now no longer have the opportunity to ask staff to see plans. And our advice from LGA and our advice to anyone is to lodge FOIs with Plan SA. That may clog the system in order to trigger a change, but that would be the process. Whether or not they release during an assessment, couldn't tell you, because I haven't run that process.
I think, Councillor, as far as I'm aware, that the process is more open than it's ever been. There's been a commitment by the Commission to make more information available, and the meetings as open as they've ever been, apart from the actual deliberation themselves. I thought they had moved to make the papers available at the time that they went to SCAP members, a bit like we get our agenda 4 days prior, that all the reports associated with the assessment process are made available as well. I think that's the case. I'm just trying to have a quick look. I've failed, but worth looking on the SCAP site. FOIing during the assessment process, in my estimation, wouldn't achieve a lot because it takes a long time to process an FOI request. It's probably going to be assessed before you actually get your response. Afterwards, yes, but it could take a long time and the decision's already made, so it's a bit frustrating. You are able to sit in on a SCAP matter unless it's been deemed confidential for other reasons. There might be, nuclear power plant discussions or something, but generally they're open hearings now, and you can sit in and listen to everything that's said by the applicant and respondents and other representatives. You just have to leave for the deliberation. So it's actually quite open, and I would envisage that that's the case with this application, that we'd be able to attend this hearing if you wanted to.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's a bit of a long answer to some questions you didn't ask, but I thought I'd add a bit more. Are there any other questions, Councillor De Backer? You're
That's
Done?
fine. Yep, thank you.
Councillor.
Can I just check with, through the staff, if responses actually or updates being provided to the Prospect Broadview Bowling Club? Initially, there was an email from former director Simon Bradley on the 9th of February to organise a meeting. I believe a meeting occurred at the club with stakeholders on the 5th of March. I did receive an email on the 25th or 21st of April from the club saying that some follow-up that it was going to occur hadn't occurred. Obviously, I provided that email to staff on the 25th of April, where the club were disappointed. Can I just see if if we followed up with the club on that?
Yeah.
If anyone's aware, if it's been since then.
Through you, Chair, to the manager government.
No, through the chair, not to my knowledge, but happy to follow
If
up.
we
for
can
you.
take that on notice. And come
All right.
back to you.
If you can, that'd be great. Just to make sure that Rob Clennam's been brought up.
Sure.
Any further
Thanks.
questions without notice? Councillor Harris.
I was going to ask it when you got to the mayoral bit, but we can get it out now. In the mayoral bit, you put down that you and the CEO went and seen the Duke family management down there, and the question is, was anything raised about the fencing between on the road that protect our people and Port Adelaide people? That fence in the middle of the road's been damaged since September, and I couldn't remember the actual date, but September last year. And the new one's been about 6 weeks. That's right on the lights. And about 3 days ago, I watched a lady with 2 children, and rather than go to the lights, they climbed through the thing. So I imagine it might be the main roads type of people, but I just wondered if you raise it with the Dukes and said, you know, here's a fence to your property.
Yeah, the simple answer is no, we didn't raise it with them. It's not on their land, it's not on our land. And see, it might be something we've got to take on notice. It is
Okay.
damaged. There are people crossing
Yeah.
informally. It's very dangerous.
Oh.
And I'm not sure who paid to put that fence in. So why don't we see if the staff can chase it up for us? Because
Thank
you're
you.
right, the repairs are long overdue.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you,
that's
Chair.
good. Thank you for that. Any further questions without notice? If not, we'll move on then to item 10, which is reports for decision versus 10.1, the request to establish an easement on council land adjacent to 284 Prospect Road. Recommendations of page 4. Somebody happy to move it in its current form? Councillor Nguyen, do you wish to speak to it?
Just thank you for the report. Just reading through, there seems to be very minimal impact on the of if we were to grant the easement, you know, onto the car park and for our community members. And I think I'm comfortable if the CEO has, you know, those conversations with eminent homes so that the future use of this easement area doesn't hinge on any future activities for us. So, yeah.
Yep, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Harris, do you wish to speak to it?
No, I read it and I'm quite happy with that area in between the two things. In fact, I'm more than happy with it because you've got a defined area there and people can't say, oh, we move over a bit. So through those red lines there, I'm happy to move everything that was already said.
Okay, thank you. Any further debate? There being none, Councillor Nguyen, you wish to sum up those 2 excellent speeches, one of them being yours. Okay, that concludes debate. All those in favour? Against, it is carried unanimously. Thank you. 10.2, Community Emergency Management Policy recommendations of page 7. Somebody happy to move it in its current form? Deputy Mayor, do you wish to speak to it?
Just to briefly confirm that this is a fairly industry or sort of local government standard document. We haven't gone out and developed our own plan, and we've adopted the best practice that's being used elsewhere.
My understanding is CEO.
Through you, Chair, to the director.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Thank you. Anything further? No, good. Have someone to second it. Councillor Barnett.
Yes, I'll settle it. And I believe when we had a presentation several years ago now by these powers that be about community emergency management and whatever. And it still seems to me that most of the people in our community wouldn't have a clue about responding to a community emergency. So I'm just wondering, somehow in all of this, shouldn't we perhaps be having some information to our community about what happens? I think the Red Cross have got I think we still have an excellent pack for community. Link to that, some things like that. A lot of people wouldn't have a clue about, some of them might still have their candles or their LED lights in case the power or light goes out. But there's a whole range of things that in my opinion, I don't think our community is really aware of in an emergency. So I think somewhere in all this leadership position, there should be perhaps be a bit more information for our community.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Backer.
Look, just to follow on from Councillor Barnett's comments, I think involving the community is really good. I mean, the chance of floods and plagues, and we're on a fault line, so all those exciting things. But certainly, without being glib, I think if we look at what happened in Christchurch, it was certainly significant damage to infrastructure. We do sit on a fault line, and I think it would be good to have some ready information on our website to look what to do in an emergency. The other thing, maybe I missed it, any funding requirements, because this is talking about standards, and I'm just wondering if there's any cost implications in adhering to this policy based on what we originally allocated.
Through the chair to the director.
Through the chair, right now the cost itself is actually our staff time to be part of LGA, to be part of iResponder. In terms of community, in the event there's a community disaster, we will work with iResponder, which includes all council, and council will know what part that we have to play in protect our community. Separate to that, we also have our business continuity plan and how do we respond as a council. So in terms of cost, no additional.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor. Good. Any further debate? Councillor Harris.
Yeah, I read it and quite happy with it. But I think the experience we've had the last 2 years, a couple of things that I think it might not actually now in the new world go quite far enough with some of it, because it's all floods. Our chances of a good flood are not too good unless you live down that end of town, and the main would be not too much bothered by earthquake. Well, I can slightly remember, because I remember Dad throwing us out of the bed, 53. But new things have come, like with the COVID stuff and that overnight, just what we've seen, Victorians and us today, that would there possibly, and this is only coming out of me, would there maybe have to set up a food place or supply places that could be instantaneous in something different? I've never dealt with a disease. So I just thought there was a couple of new areas that people could look at. The circumstances can be a bit different, but apart from that, what I've read through here, I'm quite happy.
Thank you. Any further debate? No? Deputy Mayor, to sum up?
No, thanks.
That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against, it is carried unanimously. The next item is item 10.3, policy review, development of public realm urban corridor enforcement policy, community consultation outcomes and endorsement. I had a discussion with staff and I recommended a number of improvements to the back end of the policy. I think the front end states the position pretty clearly. I think the back end needs to be tightened up to make sure we follow through with the intention. So staff have elected to withdraw that item from tonight's agenda and bring it back to us presumably at the next meeting. If you have any other comments, please forward them through to the director for consideration. Item 10.4, 2020 LGA Scheme Awards received.
Sorry, just, so can you, not necessarily now, but if you've asked Nathan to do something, that's good. Can you tell us then what, in his report, what you feel is different? You know, what you think should be added or not added? So save us doing the same thing.
Okay.
I've read that one. I'm pretty keen on this one. And so you say, oh, take it away. And I agree with that. And I look at page 26 and I don't see what David's talking about, you know?
Yeah. I'll try and do it quickly because we're
Yeah.
still in session. The statement of intent at the front talks about every corridor development will require a traffic management plan. But if you look at the back end, it's not an excuse to put an enforcement notice on somebody, and I think it should be. At the front end, it defines a development approval as being the trigger. At the back end, it talks about an offence under the Act or offending the legislation. That's not defined in the definitions, so the language is not the same throughout the document. The list of reasons that you issue an expiation notice, I think, are a bit waffly. I'd like it to be crystal clear, so anyone who reads it knows if I haven't complied with my development approval, I'll get an expiation notice. It currently says an offence against the Act. I'm not thinking, well, what does that mean? So there's a few things like that in the back end that I think just need to be really tightened up and made really clear to make sure that what we want to do at the front end, which I think the words are really good, actually takes effect, and that staff can read it independently and work it out, and someone who wants to issue a complaint against us can read it and work it out that they're in a hole and they just better go and fix the problem rather than hiring a lawyer. So it's those sort of issues.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'll take a couple of questions, Councillor Back.
Look, just a question through the chair in regards to process withdrawing an item. You'll have to explain it to me. So is that done usually at the beginning of a meeting, or is that done any time?
It's really the discretion of the CEO, as I understand it.
Yes, I'm not sure whether it should be in the meeting, but obviously when it's come up, excuse me, I'm just.
No,
There's a lurgy going through our office. I'm sorry, that's why the acting director's away tonight. I'm not sure when it would come up, but typically when we are going through this in the pre-meeting, we might make that call based on feedback, for example, from the chair.
So maybe just a question through to the governance officer, because I think certainly there's a few of us key on this tonight. There's probably people at home that are really interested in this, and just as a matter of meeting process, I think if those things are highlighted earlier rather than later, I mean, I know, and I'm certainly keen to have this improved, and I appreciate the mayor's focus on detail, because it's the lack of detail that I think has got us to pickle in the beginning. So I totally appreciate it, but just as a matter of meeting process, I think, yeah, if there's items withdrawn, if they could be maybe done that at the beginning of the meeting.
Take that on notice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Following on from that, can I just check why we couldn't, for this item, say move item 1 where we receive and note the report, and then note where we think there need to be improvements, and then that way that at least members of the public know. Because I'd be happy to support item recommendation 1 on there, but clearly we're not happy to adopt it, and I agree with your comments. But could we? Is there a reason why the CEO needs to remove it? We could simply remove 1 and say number 2, bring this report back in 1 month's time, addressing all of the points A to thing, because to have it just fully removed, it just looks a bit funny.
Sure. I've provided comments as an elected member. The director said it's probably best we withdraw that so we can deal with those comments. The decision to withdraw it is not my decision. But it's clear from the comments I've made, dealing with those as amendments on the floor would be messy, because I'll probably seeking to amend about 15 places within the policy. That's not appropriate to do in a council setting. The process from there on is really in the staff's hands. So your comments, I think, are valuable. In effect, the issue is the policy. All the rest of the other stuff in there is really, it doesn't achieve a hell of a lot. But CEO, I'm not sure whether you.
Well, through the chair, I mean, I need to reassure elected members that no tolerance policy exists and will continue to apply. This is about making sure that we get that final document right, but nothing will change in terms of the ongoing approach that we're going to take, which is reflected in the beginning of the policy. And we've taken on board the chair's view that it could be, when it's put to this body, it should be clearer and the back end should be more consistent. We've taken that on board, and we don't want to spend councillors' time going through minutiae. But I do want to really emphasise that, in fact, we continue with the no tolerance policy as you've directed.
Yeah, just a really firm reminder, I totally agree with the CEO. The resolution we made was that zero tolerance takes effect immediately. That's in place. This is just getting the wording right.
Yes. Sorry about my throat.
Councillor,
Yes, just apropos of that. So in our minutes, I'm just wondering the wording that would say, because if it's just like, oh, withdrawn, that raises questions perhaps in the public's view or somewhere, I don't know. But so it was withdrawn for further information to be provided or something like that. Is there some, do we have some wording like that?
I'm really your hands, CEO.
Sure. Thank you, Chair. Very happy, Councillor, simply to say it's withdrawn with a view to simply clarifying some aspects of the policy to bring back. I can commit to bringing it back at the very next meeting for confirmation. But as I said, I just really do need to confirm that our policy approach has not changed and will not change simply because we've withdrawn it.
Yes.
Once again, sorry for my throat, it seems to have come on.
Yes, because I know there are certain residents out there who are very hot to trot on this, especially around Devonport Terrace. So just to see something like this withdrawn, I think, oh, so a little bit more clarification, I think is appreciated. Thank you for that.
No one hotter than me, Councillor, and my apologies. I've been away, so I didn't get to read the papers in detail until last night. So hence, the advice of staff has been late. As I say, it's just a number of changes that mean doing it on the floor makes it really messy. So rest assured, the intent has not changed in all the practice.
That's good to get it right. That's good.
Now, honours with good news, item 10.4 is the LGA Scheme Awards, receipt of a major risk management award. Here it is. It's great. It's fantastic. I'll pass it around because you can't read that. But when it's in front of you, read it. And in this envelope here was. Check. Hang on. There's still something here, Jenny. It's the letter. And it's going to be put in our account via EFT, which we've received it. So it's all done. But just to let you know, that's the award that we received, and the report states that it was for saving the carob tree. I'm happy for someone to move and second it, but just to let you know, that's the award.
Yes.
Councillor Barnett,
Yes,
just to speak to it.
I'm happy to move, and congratulations to those involved with this award. And certainly the carob tree and what was happening to it at the time, and was quite a source of some community what's the word, inquisitiveness and all that. So and I'm glad from a history point of view that has drawn attention to its history and the importance of saving it. So well done there. However, I'm just wanting a little bit more explanation, seeing that this was about risk management. I haven't seen the connection between that we're going to be putting the money towards the 20,000 to utilise within its risk management program. This will be used towards the Marikata project endorsed by council, etc. So I'm failing to see a connection.
I would like to refer your question to the CEO.
Yes.
That was where the call was made, I believe. In his absence, Director of Corporate Services, would you like to comment?
Through the chair, the award is not linked to anything. So that is just a pool of money that we can apply to tackle any projects that may have a risk associated to it. So we have declare we have a statement about Macarena. We do not have any funding. So we've applied to it. Is what is the reputational risk? What is the damage risk that council has made a statement, but we are not funding this specific project. So we apply based on that, and that is how we have allocated the money.
It's prize money.
Correct, it's prize money.
Yes.
Thanks, councillor, and you should speak further to the matter.
No, having that had it explained, it most probably would have been good to have had that little bit more explanation there, but I accept that.
Okay, thank you. And looking for a seconder.
Oh, no, sorry, that's a good question. Sorry.
Councillor Brief, wish to speak to it?
I will second it and I will speak to it. I think it's a great use of the money, and well done, Jimmy, or Director of Corporate Services, for suggesting a CEO, suggesting it for that purpose. I just think the water's great, the money is great, but we can't forget the tree. And that tree meant nothing to me at all until I had kids. And it meant nothing to me until I had kids, and those kids went to St. Helens Park kindergarten. And so that tree becomes a magnet for probably some antisocial behaviour that happens from time to time, but more importantly, some really good engagement by young people in the community. So I know when the branches fell down, everyone thought it was going to be pulled over and everything else that happened. There was a lot of sadness around that. So I just think it's fantastic to celebrate the trees in such a way, $20,000 prize and of the awards. I think it's really great. And it's great the trees there.
Yes.
Did you get
much
that?
tree. Thank you. I did. Did you have a question?
Yes.
I'll just take a question before I come to you, Councillor Harris.
Just in terms of process, I know obviously it states in here what the $20,000 is going to do, but I guess in the report, does that actually need to be as a separate recommendation? Because I look at that now, obviously I read the full report, but I would assume if we're approving budget line and we've approved $8,000 for a program, and if that's going to 28,000, I would have thought that would have to come. So I'm not actually happy with that process, if I'm honest. I've got a bit of question around that.
So,
And not so much, it's not so much the outcome of what the money is going towards that I have an issue with, it's the outcome of the process with the line in the report that I do have a problem.
So yeah, just before you answer this question, while you're absent, there was a question about, does the money need to be tied to a risk management project? And the Director of Corporate Services, no, it's prize money, you can allocate it how you like. So that issue's been dealt with. This question is procedurally, can it just be added to a budget line without council's ownership of that decision?
Perhaps I could start with the director, if that's right.
Through the chair, council has approved that. That has been submitted to council in the third budget review at last month council, and it was highlighted. So council has approved that particular budget allocation.
So it's approved
20,000 through the chair.
The max as well.
Council
That's
has
20.
approved that.
Thank you. Thank you for the reminder. Councillor Harris.
I would have mentioned that if I had a, sorry, on that next chance. Thank you to the seconder beating me to come in. The tree, the money you've answered, I'm totally happy with the way that went. The award, I'm happy, but it's amazing the tree and to the previous speaker, the mention of my children are the same at St. Helens, and it's a history that has happened there. It's actually homeless people have made it their home over many years, and bad people have made it home to themselves for other reasons. But the people around, and it hurts me a little bit that we cut down a gum tree somewhere and I get half a dozen people say something to me, and yet when this thing looked like it was dying and they fenced it off and it was going to be cut up, the amount of people that actually come forward and, oh, what's happening to it? What's happening to it? You know what? The interest was quite good, and so I congratulate, and it says through the report, the people that done the hard jacket to keep it alive, pick it up, put the branches where they are, and get it going again. And very happy to support this motion, and wish we could save a few more trees in our area. So,
Thank you. Any further speakers to that? Councillor at the back.
Without rehashing what all the other elected members have said, I think it's a great thing. But coming back to our communication strategy, we really need to celebrate these things, and it's a great photo opportunity to have a load of kids in and around the tree, poking their heads out through it. Send it to the advertiser. I'm just wondering, is there a communications plan to the wider public and our community about this saving of the tree?
CEO, there was a little video done for the award submission.
Yes, indeed.
Beyond that,
Through you, Chair, we're very happy to put that on the agenda. It is a good news story, and the use of the funds is a good news story. As the Chair and I met with the Ghana people about our future, and so very, very happy to take that on board and to do as much as we can a human interest story around the tree. Thank you. Good suggestion. Any further debate? Councillor Barnett, just to sum up.
No, having 64 years ago as a 10-year-old, played on that tree and with some of the children that were from the Morgan family that lived there. It's quite a meaningful tree to myself as well.
Could I do a point of order there? I'd like to say that when I said
Hang-
people use
hang
it for
on,
bad
hang on.
reasons, it wasn't.
Could you do a point of order? Is yes, and I need to ask you which section of the Act you're talking about, because we're just in the summing up.
Or just tidying up the act that I said people done bad things and I wasn't talking about the previous speaker.
Thank you. Thank you very little, Councillor. That concludes the debate. All those in favour?
I wasn't famous.
It's carried unanimously. I was going to ask after I took the vote which one of you broke the tree, but never mind. I'll do that. It's all over. That concludes that section. We're now on to item 11, general business of an urgent nature. Are there any urgent matters to raise? No. Next item is reports for information. We vote for these en bloc unless they're withdrawn. Item 12.1, does anybody wish to withdraw the mayoral monthly activity report? No, thank you, Deputy Mayor, for filling in. Item 12.2, the audit committee meeting minutes. Anybody wish to withdraw that? No. 12.3, planning and design code outcomes and early observations. I've withdrawn, so we can have that discussion, Councillor. Item 12.4, capital or major project status updates. Anybody wish to withdraw that? And the director is, acting director is absent. Okay, so someone wish to move on block on 12.1, 12.2 and 12.4. Councillor Harris, there's no debate. Before moving on block, do I have a seconder? Councillor Groot. That concludes debate because there isn't any. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so we'll go to item 12.3, the planning and design code. I just withdraw it to, I guess, have debate around the heritage knockback and what we might do instead. So I'm happy for someone to move it and get it on the floor. I'm sure others want to comment in that regard as well. Somebody wish to move it in its current form.
I'll move it to get it on the floor.
Councillor DeBacker, wish to speak to it?
Yes, I would. Look, I mean, one was the way the information came to us on the fact that it was refused. So sort of, it was an email that was sent around by the director of planning and communications, and it was kind of a byline. You know, I think it is actually a big deal. We put a lot of effort into putting that submission in and consulted with our community, and for all of those to be rejected, I just find questionable. I did also consult the mayor, and he said, well, we'll wait and we'll do something else. And I don't know what that something else is. And I just want to be clear on why we're just accepting that knockback and how we're going to lobby to champion what our community believes in many ways. Not say too little too late. There's a lot of other properties and buildings and spaces and places that could be on the list, but we were very selective not to put too much forward. And I just don't really understand how all of it's been knocked back, and I've been really welcoming of the debate, and I hope there's some people that got some clear ideas how to lobby. Okay, so we've got Councillor Barnett possibly with some amendments, but look, I think it's a really important issue. People do value the character of the area, the heritage of the area. I think it's really exciting that we're starting to embrace heritage plaques, understanding we're in History Month at the moment, understanding the value of heritage tourism. People walk their dogs wayfinding. I think heritage is a really good story to tell, and people are increasingly proud of the stories that their houses hold. So I look forward to the debate or discussion.
Thank you. I have a second. Deputy Mayor, to speak to it.
I need to say I'm looking forward to the debate.
Okay, thank you. Further debate. Councillor Barnett, I believe.
Yes, I would like to make an amendment to the recommendation. Currently, the recommendation is just that council, number one, consider it and notes report. Well, I think that we should pick up on some important points, as Councillor Alison de Backer has pointed out. So I would like to add that number two amendment, that council pursue code amendment that would ensure council pursue code amendment that would ensure I've got it written down.
Brilliant. Yes, terrific.
So basically, it's picking up on some of the points in there that I think I can't talk
Be preferred.
legally as I run.
You walked the longest, right?
Just getting
Yeah. Don't let me discipline you twice in one meeting, Councillor Harris.
Okay.
It'll be a record.
Finish for the night. Polish it, right?
Step
I was going to complain about the car.
Sorry, we're just getting this.
Just getting the step camera up. It's all good.
Councillor Barnett still has the floor. I think you've got 32 seconds left.
Oh, thank you. Yes, so
ample time,
it's covering the council pursue code amendment that would ensure each historic area overlay in the city of Prospect has identified representative buildings. And part three, that council administration liaise with colleagues throughout the sector to gauge local government support for a code amendment addressing the issue. That is new policy. The design module be amended to have a screening height of 1.7 metres and prevention of views to 45 metres at urban corridor zone interface.
Okay, can I just hold you there because
Yes.
you've raised quite a few issues that are technical. Let's let the words be dealt with. You can check the words,
Yeah.
and I'll stop the clock on your time. You can start again when you're at that point. So that's the first one. You had a part three.
It's about visual pipes as per.
As well. Yep.
Got that. Yeah, if I'm speaking, to me, that seemed to be.
Just hold on, because because of the nature of what you're amending, I want people to see it so they know what you're
Right.
talking to.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So legislation doesn't talk about types of. No, if it's not contrary, then it's within the law. It's all right. It's within the law. It's within the law. Yeah. Okay, so Councillor Barnett, if you could just check the wording there, sure you're happy with that.
amendments. Whether there's lots of amendments.
Pursue a code amendment
Mm, yeah.
in part 2.
I'll take a copy of those. Throughout the sector. Through the council administration, there's colleagues throughout the sector.
Say again, councillor.
It's just been put up.
Just been done. Okay. So you're happy with that wording grammatically, CEO? Any that works for you?
Such as a garage level, that is, could you take out the dash there?
Yeah.
That is new policy.
Is this interesting?
Yes.
This issue.
That is in the design module, that is new policy, take out is, I guess, in the director, can you help me with this?
The new policy in the. just take
In
out
the
is.
second
There's new
is.
policy in taking out is.
Mm.
So is the only issue, councillor, you with raising item 3, screening, height, and prevention of views, overlooking? No, it should be overlooking, isn't it, rather than just views? Is that the issue?
I've just copied word for word what was in it, so
From the
got
report,
better wording, yes.
director?
Quoting the
Um,
prevention of overlooking views.
Through the chair, to me, it sounds like we're looking
It's in the table.
to grab previous policy that we had,
Yes.
that we would consider best practice that didn't make it into the code,
Yes.
and have a crack at trying to get it into
I
the
understand the
code.
intent, the wording. Just.
It's in the
Prevention of
table.
I would swap
It's in
overlooking
the
to
table.
views if it was me. Oh, sorry,
Prevention
swap
of-
views,
Swap views to overlooking. Yep,
just to get it into. the
that's okay with you,
same
councillor
lingo.
Barnett.
Yes, I'm
Change that.
certainly guided by the,
And just going back to the second line there, addressing this issue, that is new policy.
it should be comma, addressing this issue, comma, that is. comma.
Well,
That's correct.
For addressing the issue of.
so we can just get rid of the words, I think, after addressing, up to the word addressing the, keep going, keep going. Yep, let's get rid of that. Addressing the design module to be amended. And then perhaps the word new in front of design module. The new design module to be amended to have a screening height of 1.7 metres and prevention of overlooking to 45 metres at urban corridor. Director, does that make sense to you?
Intent is clear.
It's
Yes.
clear, you can work with that, okay, happy
Yes,
with
happy
that,
with that.
councillor?
Yes.
All right, thank you, we need another couple of minutes to talk to it. Take it.
Well, I just think it's important that these things were important to us and important to the residents when we went going through all this process. So I just think it's important that we follow up, and then if we put into our list of working items, then there will be a follow up that will actually be done, and the public and our residents will see that we think this is important, and that we'll continue on with following it up, and not just saying, oh well, bad luck, we didn't get them in. So yeah, so that was my intent.
Okay, thank you. So the intent is clear. I seek leave of the meeting if the mover and seconder are happy to incorporate, as I normally do. Mover being councillor Tobacco, you're happy to incorporate?
More than happy to
Yes.
incorporate.
Seconder, Deputy Mayor, yes.
So, yeah.
I still seek leave of the meeting. All those happy to incorporate indicate so it's unanimous, so that now becomes part of the motion. Thank you, councillor Barnett. Any further debate on this item? I mean, for anybody, could be. Councillor, your time is toast. It's an unofficial, non-legislative term under the Act. I'm calling you 5 minutes.
I said, no, I've got no more comment. I
Thank you.
don't know how much clearer I
Thank
can be.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Because I withdrew it, I should just explain why I agree with part 2, definitely, that if the reason for the minister's refusal is that they're already protected under the historic conservation zone. I absolutely disagree with that statement, and I'd very much like us to write back saying we have temporary demolition control over those properties. That's it. We have no ability to refuse demolition, provided that we approve the replacement. And we can't refuse the approval of the replacement if it fits the development plan. I have spoken to countless ministers about this over the years. I cannot understand why they don't understand it. I can't believe why the department staff don't understand it. I can't believe why they don't brief their ministers properly. It is fundamentally untrue to say that representative buildings have demolition protection. So we should make that pretty clear in our response, I believe, and I'll continue to try and do my bit. The intention of part 2 is that we make sure that if that's how they're going to interpret it, that each zone has at least a sample of representative buildings within it to try and define what makes the zone worthwhile. And I absolutely agree with the intent of that. Part 3, I agree with that in terms of the rules that we fought hard to get out of the development plan due to feedback on the zone interface. I think they're still worthwhile. In fact, some would say they want that within the zone. We don't actually have that within the zone. So an apartment building can look into each other's windows and make visual love if they want. But if you're looking into a residential zone nearby, that's what we had. And I think that was appreciated because we had some early problems with that. Yeah. The reason I withdrew it was to expand on the heritage issue in the sense that we didn't win everything we wanted when we did it 5 years ago. It's about 6 years ago. In particular, some homes in Burwood Avenue. The response from the Minister of the day was, look, you've probably got enough here in Nailsworth to have a zone. And we've never gone back and asked for the zone to be put forward as a proposal. And I'd really like someone on the floor to put a further part up to amend it to say that maybe there's an extra part 3 associated with sort of part 2, but not part 2, that we investigate the ability for there to be heritage conservation zones to the east of Main North Road. Because as far as I'm aware, there's only Medindi Gardens. I suppose there's only the one. And I think there could be quite a large chunk of Nailsworth could be considered. And within that, some representative buildings. And I think we should put together a far more comprehensive heritage code amendment, not just the representative buildings one. In my view, that's why I withdrew it. I think that the setback we've got before us is an entree to us to say we'll come back with a larger application, because previously you said we could only do contributory items where we thought they could be elevated to local heritage listings. We had some suggestions about some other properties that people thought should be elevated, but because they weren't already contributory items, we were not allowed to put them in the process. So if they want to refuse this, I think they've opened the gate to a broader heritage listing process, and I think that's exactly what we should do. So it's not restricted by what's been moved, what's about to be put to you to vote on, but it might be you want to expand on it, as I've just discussed, for extra heritage conservation zones east of Main North Road. Thank you. Councillor Harris.
I was going to try and move another amendment.
What one?
Well, amendment to 3, but hopefully to the whole lot, that we should look and then approach the government to a further heritage zone, or in the, and I don't think we should call it the east, although I would, the other side of Main North Road, and to support that, right, so I'm moving that we get the staff and then the appropriate authorities to look at increasing our zones, particularly in the east of the city. And my emphasis to why I want to do that, to the east of Main North Road. The upper side.
Perhaps can I suggest the word investigate in there somewhere? Council administration investigate increasing.
Yeah, sorry. Investigating, then approaching the appropriate authorities, I suppose.
to increase.
To increase the historic conservation zone, particularly to the east of Main North Road.
We should speak any further to that before I.
Just very briefly, that when we look, and you particularly said Burwood Avenue, which had some old places and some great places that were built around the 40s, late 30s, and particularly 50s. But if you look at, which we don't even talk about anymore now, Nailsworth Village, which is the end of California Street, and you got 4 buildings there behind Steve Georgianus's area. You've got that little thing there when Ecnot Fry come along, and he built a little village there to have his shepherds look after his sheep while they were doing various work to plough and cutting down the trees for Parliament House. So there's a couple of places in there, and actually like a little village place of about half a dozen houses that are as old, and I would say actually older than Prospect Village. But I'm not going to debate that. I'm just saying in that same era of time, in a very, very early stage, there's a school teacher that was there that originally went and built our second school in South Australia. So there's a lot of history and buildings that are still standing in that old Nailsworth Village. So to me, that makes a very good reason why we should at least investigate and look. A lot of them are gone now and things like that, but I'm hoping previous speakers will attach that to theirs. If not, I will move it.
Can I?
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Just before we leave you, I think your point was to investigate the local heritage and approach the appropriate authorities, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You didn't just want to ask.
I think it was really, I thought it was there already.
It got pruned.
Right.
Tidied up, but I think that there's 2 things. You want to investigate the local heritage and also talk to the appropriate authorities. Is that correct? Is that?
Yeah, the local heritage, particularly with their buildings, because there's very little else that you'll find there. So housing, that's great. Like, no, I'm happy with it. Like, it's local heritage.
Okay.
Thank you.
There's a question.
Question, sorry, Councillor Barnett.
It's not historic conservation.
Sorry, I
zones.
can't hear you.
It's not historic conservation zones, isn't it? Any longer. It's historic area overlay.
Take the question. Director, what's the correct terminology now under the new
Through the chair, historic area overlay.
Like,
historic area overlays? So, Councillor Harris, if you're happy to change it to the
I'll
new
go for a bit of overlay if it.
new
I'm not
nomenclature.
sure what it is, but I'll accept it.
Historic area overlay.
That's what it's.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Councillor Barnett.
Bit worried at times.
You've spoken to it. I'll now seek the indulgence of the mover. Are you happy to incorporate that?
Yes.
Seconder, happy to incorporate the change. Now seek leave of the meeting. All those happy to incorporate the change, it's incorporated unanimously, becomes part of the motion. Any further debate on the motion?
Can I just ask, obviously, because it started tonight,
Councillor Rick.
respect we've got amendments, it started obviously for the public as just a report for information, we're obviously moving amendments. Can I just check, just for clarity, that if we're going to add these amendments, that I guess, will other community aware of, particularly in the east, of what any potential impacts that will have on development in the area, just generally, will that restrict anything? Because I just think we just need to make sure that if we're pushing, we're going with these amendments, and I think they are good amendments, that we're not going to have adverse effects on the community without them hearing about it first or being asked.
Yes.
Through the chair, the amendments, if they were to get up tonight, essentially, I want to say achieve nothing, but if you follow my logic, they don't cause any change to policy and they don't trigger anything other than a process. The process was talked about in the information report anyway, was going to SPDPC, opening these discussions there anyway. That will then give us an opportunity to talk about what the scope is, what the budget would be, and then what the process is. A code amendment has a process like an old development plan amendment that includes public consultation, that includes an opportunity to seek feedback if there is local heritage listing. And so there's definitely a process. This doesn't do anything other than launch a process. So we launch a discussion for a
I'm happy
process.
with that.
Thank you. Any further debate? That being the case, councillor at the back, you wish to sum up?
No, just to thank other elected members for just pursuing with getting better outcomes from the code. It's disappointing. I think we find ourselves in this position that we're still having to go back and try and drag the state up from where they should be. And I just commend the staff for all the hard work, because I know that they're putting in a lot of effort behind the scenes. So I'd encourage you to support the motion and continue those sort of encouraging conversations with the state.
Thank you. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Thank you. Which brings us to council member reports and briefings, if there are any. Councillor Rick.
Just want to thank the staff for putting on the volunteer thank you event recently. It was absolutely wonderful, had really positive feedback. Also, thank you for it being an evening function. This has actually been the first one I've been able to get to outside of working hours, because a lot of them in the past have been smack bang in the middle of the day, which is, as I've said to staff, unfortunately, I haven't been able to get there. It was really good, received really positive feedback. I thought and the feedback was, the food was excellent, staff were really tentative, friendly. The comedian was good fun. I enjoyed it as well. It was a good show, and yeah, there's a good vibe from the volunteers on the night. And the the deputy mayor was also
Best awards I've ever
star of the show, and it was good to see that that the deputy mayor and Councillor Nguyen actually defeated the other two in the show as well, and not by quite a margin as well. So your knowledge of apparently reading the audience and reading the room was quite high. So well done. But no, it was a really good event, and yeah, the feedback was very good.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other elected member briefings or reports? That being the case, we'll move on to motions on notice. Sorry, Deputy Mayor. So totally missed you.
I can understand why.
Not at all.
Well, you forgot to mention the CEO and the role that he played, particularly pointing out his agile adoption of the red theme and wearing a nice napkin as a lapel pin, I believe. Resplendent, but did a great job on the night, CEO.
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And I have thanked all of the staff on your behalf.
I sent this through late. I just wanted to thank the Mayor for going away on business and also on leave as well, because it gave me the opportunity to actually do something as deputy. Sorry. I get the badge out every week and get the brasso out. Borrow Councillor Groot's brasso and polish it up nicely.
I had a lot left over, let me tell you.
In case I got the opportunity to roll it out. The Dream Big Local Schools exhibition was great to be involved, and I got to meet up with some of the kids who helped me prepare my speech, and it gave me good insight into the incredible amount of hard work that we know the staff do, but unless you're amongst it, you often don't see it. So they put on a fantastic event, very well coordinated, very well run, very well attended. Fantastic speech I heard on the night was given, one of the best speeches ever. No, some other guy. So yeah, thanks once again for going on holidays from Council Distance, and feel free to go on holidays anytime you like in the future.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for filling in, and that's a much more extensive list, and that we don't record council member reports and briefings in the minutes. I don't think that's our practice. We don't, but thank you for providing that. That's our policy. Happy for you to elect to have a different policy at some point if you want elected members. But thank you for filling in some of the details and for doing such a great job. Good feedback. Motions on notice, item 14.1, and those notice of motion regarding library funding by Councillor Barnett. We've relaxed our requirement previously to read the motion, but of course, if you want to use your 5 minutes reading this very long motion, get right ahead.
No, thank you, and for the opportunity to have this raised. And I think particularly because our Ben Footner, our Manager of Library Services, is President of the Public Library Association, and I think we just love our library and our plenty, and it plays a huge role, and certainly in our planning it certainly played a huge role in all this. So, yeah, I do just have a correction because our friends of the Prospect Library, 2 letters were sent to these 2 people in part 1, and just today I got back saying a correction. So we can't write to the Honourable Vicky Chapman, Deputy Premier and Minister for Local Government, because this is not in her sector. It is to Premier Stephen Marshall that we need to write. So that correction could be made. So if we remove Honourable Vicky Chapman from there, and we need to put in, it's the Honourable Stephen Marshall, Premier of South Australia.
Yeah, I'll speak to that.
The Marshall, Premier, I suppose we have to say South Australia.
And Minister of the Arts, as I understand as well.
Yes, yes, I think that's where it lays in that, so that's sector. All right, so I think everybody has had an opportunity to read my motion, and I think it highlights all the important things, and certainly friends of Prospect Library have written their letters supporting this, and so I really encourage us and hope that everybody here will support it. Because, you know, if we don't do or say anything, it may just, well, I don't think they can sneak this through, but you never know. So I think we really need to be on the front foot here, and I'll certainly be encouraging. I've written to the, I'm a board member of the National Friends for Libraries Australia. So I've written to them to ask if they could also support us here in South Australia on this matter. So I commend it to everybody to pass it. Thank you.
Thank you. For the second. Mr. DeBacker, you should speak to.
Well, just to support the motion, well, I heard this on radio and they were talking about cutting and they couldn't confirm how much they were going to cut. But it's knowing the impact, and I think, again, there's a communication piece around this. So I think, especially during the time of COVID, it's really easy for us, well, not just as a community, I think everyone's gone a little bit more insular and working from home and being at home. But I'll tell you that the one card system is absolutely brilliant. And I think that democratisation of information, I use Linda Learning, which is now LinkedIn Learning. It's about $50 value per month that I get through having that library card. And that's an enablement tool. So that allows me to do my professional development. So it's not just reading books, it's actually digital equity, because in a time where you've got, you know, digital growth and, you know, skill shortages, having access to those resources is really vital. So it's almost how we communicate this out to our public as well. These are fantastic resources that you've got available to you. And this is threatened if you don't support continued funding and increased funding. One of the interesting things in the report is the value that you get back. So for the amount of money that's injected, the amount of value that you get back. So I think sort of two-pronged, yes, I really support the motion, but at the same time, I think, again, continuing, we need to communicate with our community the value that they've got. And this is an amazing resource, and we'd love to see it used and our digital resources used. I went to a podcasting session. So again, congratulations to the library team. I attended that as my own. It was free. I sat there with 8 other people. And did you know any of these rooms can be booked and you can actually have podcasting equipment available? So these are all things that we have at our fingertips, available for our community groups and things like that. And these are all at threat if we lose some of this funding. So support the motion.
Thank you. Further debate? I just, for myself, this is a very important issue and widely misunderstood. I understand the Premier was approached this and said, why do we fund libraries?
The Minister for Local Government has sent a letter back saying it's not my portfolio. It is a very sad fact that we are not required under the Local Government Act to have a library at all. We're required to have one library book, one newspaper, one magazine, any desks, any computers, any seat for someone to sit and read anything anywhere in our council. I do think it's a bit churlish of the Minister for Local Government to send a letter back saying I'm not the right person. I would have thought, really, that minister could have stood up and defended our role in having libraries. Every council has them. Some share them with their local primary schools because they're small communities. It's sad that the Premier didn't know, as a minister responsible, that he funds council libraries. It's sad too that we have to point out to all of government the great benefit it has in terms of helping people who are lonely, people who are illiterate, children who are learning how to handle books and also enjoy books and then hopefully read them before they go to school, which helps the education department and lessons there, cost burden, and so many other benefits of having a library, including dissemination of information well beyond our remit. Our library is a great launching pad for information on domestic violence and all that goes with that. And this council supported that information being out there. So they're a great platform. They're also a good place to have training for local businesses. So it helps the business portfolio as well. And I think it's very ordinary that the state government don't make more of it. It's ordinary that they don't even appreciate that they are a partner. And the reason they don't, I believe, is because they're desperately trying to crab walk away from this, like they have in every other regard regarding local government. We are the lowest funded jurisdiction from a state government anywhere in the nation. And this local government sector also sees the lowest level of funding from the federal government, all bar the supplementary road fund, which we have to fight for every 2 or 3 years. So it's not like we're awash with money in this state and in this sector. So I think it's pretty sad, but just so you're aware, we're not required under the Local Government Act to have a library at all. The history of the funding is that it was 50-50 when states worked out that it was to their benefit to spread literature out further in the community. That was a pretty good funding agreement. Every state has walked back from that, and ours has got down to a pretty low level of funding, around 10% from the state, 90% from local ratepayers. The last deal done was a 10-year deal under the Labor government of the day. That was a good deal in terms of providing certainty. It was a hard-fought deal. It went down to 10% from, I think it might have been 15, or I can't remember as well, before I was involved in the state board. But as part of that deal, the one-card system was envisaged and funded out of the latter years of that deal. So if you ever think about it, the one-card system is great, but it didn't add to the book stocks. It didn't add to the variety of services offered by any individual library. It was actually a software improvement. So you could argue that that took away from core library provision. The good thing is that one card gives you access to a much bigger collection. So it's a bit of a moot point, but just don't be thinking that 10% did what the previous 15% did. So we can't afford this to go backwards. In fact, we should be putting up a cogent argument to say it should go up, but we're fighting just to keep it where it is. So the motion is really important. I just hope you enjoyed a bit of the history lesson about why this is even an issue. And it just shouldn't be. Any further debate? Right, Councillor Barnett, wish to sum up.
No, thank you for that overview, Mayor. And also going back to a bit of history, when Walkerville and Council and Prospect Council had the first in, well, I think it was the first in Australia, the agreement that we had in the compute the the area of computing side of things and how to reorganise and bring the library system, along modern sort of era and to save money as a cost-saving exercise. Yeah, so we do have a bit of historic skin in the game here. So I'm very happy that this gets passed.
Thank you. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Next is carried. Just to get back in the seat. Absolutely. Agree. Now move to items Sorry, questions with notice are nil. Confidential items, there's one, 16.1, update for the Chief Executive Officer Performance Development Review Committee. There's an order to exclude the public, just checking the staff that stay, Manager of Governance, HR and elected member support. Other than that, all other staff, I believe, are not named. So somebody happy to move that? We've seen the report. So, hang on. Somebody happy to move it? Councillor Good, I think I saw first. Did you wish to speak to
No,
it?
thank you.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor DeBacker, do you wish to speak to it? All those, sorry, any further debate on that item? All those in favour? The answer is carried. Thank you. Thank you, staff. Thank you, CEO. Try and get better.